Since my last video, price has moved up around $800 or $900 and sold back off. So it's currently around $500 above where my last video was. And have my thoughts changed on the market? Well, short answer, no. Let's start on the monthly time frame. Pretty much no change. Price is still above the 50% level of the cycle. Monthly BX trender is still red, and the monthly swing is still up, which means I still believe we are somewhere here in this August 2022 month. Maybe we squeeze a tiny bit higher, I've been talking about $80,000 or so before we get a flush out that may or may not take out the 60k low. Maybe we come in for a third monthly upswing before that final flush out. If you remember, I went into this theory in detail in my last video on the weekly time frame, in which pretty much nothing has changed. We're still above this weekly downtrend. The weekly BX trender is still green. The stochastic RSI is not overextended yet. We're not seeing any divergences yet. And we don't appear. We have taken out that previous weekly swing top. So I do believe we could be setting up for something like this, in which we've taken out that previous weekly swing top, slams back down at the end of the week or over the weekend, and starts to sell off next week. That is obviously not out of the question. On the daily time frame, you can see we turned the daily swing down. However, there was absolutely no continuation. Price got bought right back up. Even though it was a green bar, it was also a down bar. The daily BX trender stayed green. Volume was pretty, I guess you could say, on the lower side, which is a good thing because it is a down bar. If we want to see this entire range be confirmed as accumulation rather than redistribution, you want to see lower volume on the down bars rather than the up bars. Obviously, this bar here is still very suspicious in terms of volume, and it's done exactly what we expected it to. It's put a lid on the market for, I believe, around 24 hours or so. Well, it's put a lid on the market for 2 days, and I believe a half day or something like that since my last video. I don't even remember what day it is anymore sometimes. Whoops, let me just turn that off. But on the daily time frame, my analysis has still not changed. If we see the daily swing turn down, I would want to see some continuation in at least a large range flush out bar that gets me a chance to take some profits, move stops to break even on the remaining portion of my position, and see if price continues to sell off. And if something like that does happen, I am looking for obviously a break of this trend line, in which if it happens, it would be a third time break. Maybe it ends up being a fake out and we see the genuine breakdown happen on the fourth time. So potentially, I'm theorizing that maybe, price petters out, we get a flush, third time false break, we end up making a higher high, maybe 79k, something like that, and that fourth time ends up being a genuine breakout. Now, I have no idea why my drawing was so wonky, but considering how crazy the volatility has been this last week, I wouldn't rule out a absolute max pain scenario where we smash the longs and the shorts on both sides of the market. Speaking of longs and shorts, let's have a look at the CoinGlass data. You can see we're balanced, long short 50-50, which increases the chance of the next move being a genuine move. So if price ends up consolidating in a bit of a bullish flag right here, where we get this move up. Oh my god, my drawing is horrendous. And something like this happens, I am looking towards that high $70,000, maybe $80,000 up to $81,000. I wouldn't expect price to come above 83,000, because if we start to break these bottoms here, if we ignore this crazy wick right here and we just look at the closing basis, we got to close at 84.7. So I guess any wicks up to 84.7 would probably still hold structure, even though it hasn't happened yet in this bear market. You can see this 98k top was just underneath that 99k bottom. So maybe if we fall just short of this trend line, it doesn't end up being a fourth time breakout and we stall at maybe, 80,100 or something like that, then that could be our, genuine move for the next couple of days, which would also line up in my 6 weeks light green on the weekly BX trender, which I mentioned in my last video. I talked about it, I believe, right here. When we break out of that trend line, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks light green, where that 6th week pushes a little bit higher than the 5th week, and the 7th week ends up being a monster flush out. Now, obviously, history doesn't have to repeat, it just has to rhyme, but I am definitely on the lookout for something like that. But in the short term, if I jump over to the liquidation max pain chart, you can see we're pretty balanced right where we are now. We're pretty much in the middle. 75.2. We're pretty much in the middle of these two levels. 48 hour shows that we're actually slightly biasing that higher side short max pain. We're a bit closer to it than the long max pain. 3 day, pretty much the same story. 1 week, same story. 2 weeks, same story. And you can just see right here, we've gotten a whole bunch of late longs piling in, which you'll see in a second when I come over to the liquidation map, which suggests that that $70,500-ish level, so just above this swing bottom here, looks like it could serve as some support. So if price does come down, we are going to have both of these trend lines as support. So depending on when we come down, that's around 72.6, which I've talked about many times as this major trend line here, which is pretty much the same as this line here, which would serve as support for this which has served as support for this entire rally, and I would expect serves as support again. And this lower trend line, depending on when we come down to it, is about 71,200. So obviously it seems that everyone who's jumped in a late long has put their stops just below where I've marked this wave C bottom right here. So whether we manage to come close to that level and then reverse in a max pain scenario for longs and shorts, we'll have to see. But this short max pain level at $76,100, the fact that we haven't managed to hit it, I think we came like within, $50 or so. It is a bit suspicious and probably not ideal. You want to see a price cut through that level and consolidate pretty close to it. I mean, we are consolidating pretty close to it, but something like this happened at the 126k top as well, where for multiple days, price was unable to break through that level, the 1 month short max pain, and obviously we came down to tap the long max pain, even though it was a substantial distance away from the market. You can see minus 5.61%. So I would like to see consolidation above this blue trend line, and ideally some inside bars would look very nice. So if we can start to see the lows get higher on the bars as well, it would be absolutely best case scenario possible. And you can see today we've gotten a higher low. So if we can get a higher high as well, and instead of having an inside bar, we have a bit of a green bar, something like what happened here on the 15th of March, that would at least in my mind, increases the chance that we'll get a 16th and 17th of March style large range bar push to the upside. Now, before I jump into the 4-hour time frame, I'm going to show you guys the liquidation map, and you can just see how many late longs have piled in. And if I switch over to the 7-day, 30-day, you can just see every single person is piling in long. So even though we're balanced on this 24-hour, well, we're slightly out of balance, but still pretty much in balance, the chance of us coming back down to test that 73.5, 74K region, again, is pretty high. And even if we do, I still think we would probably be still holding a bit of a bullish pennant structure, in which case I would be expecting this substructure wave 3 that I've drawn here to play out. And I do believe that if we may have seen a 1, 2, 3, and we're currently in a bit of a wave 4, and we might see a substructure wave 5. Obviously, if you guys know Elliott wave, this wave 3 here that I've drawn in light blue will be broken up into a further 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 structure. And obviously this is not to scale, but we might see, you know, like an A, B, C correction, and then a second 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in which case this second 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would be the wave 3 of 3, and then we'd expect another ABC correction to make a wave 4 of 3 before getting another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to make a wave 5 of 3. If that's a little bit above you, don't stress it. But if you are from the TIA Discord community, you know Michael loves his Elliott waves, and you've probably heard him break down waves into subwaves quite a lot. So right now, I think if we ignore the wicks, I mean, if we put it on lines, you'll probably see that you can see this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little substructure that I've drawn here is still pretty valid. That one was absolutely terrible. But you can see if I'm on lines, the low of, I believe, what am I looking at? I'm actually confusing myself. There we go. The low of wave 4 has not come into the range of the top of wave 1. Because I believe the lines go off the candle closes only. They ignore the wicks and the price action to both sides. So if we don't manage to come underneath 74.4, I do think we'll probably break this 75.4 top and potentially come towards $76,000. You could say this rally is getting a bit overheated though, because you just look at the S&P 500. Like, we are 3 green weeks up, which typically, at least I know for Bitcoin, suggests, I've tested this on 3 days up for Bitcoin, but I haven't done much with 3 weeks up. But potentially that may increase the chance of a higher low forming rather than a lower low. And I believe, you know, Nvidia's seen its highest amount of green days in a row ever. I think it's like 10 days or 11 days straight up. Absolutely crazy. The other thing worth noting is price has cut through that +1 standard deviation band. It is now making its way towards the +2 standard deviation band. And last time this happened, if we touch the price 2, it very much increases the chance that we'll form a higher low and potentially rally on to make new, to have another few weeks, few months, maybe a few quarters to the upside. Now, if you've watched Jason Pizzino on YouTube, you'll know he's talked about in the later phases of the bull market cycle, the stock market can go on to make new all-time highs as Bitcoin continues to bleed out in a bear market. And this is definitely something that I am tracking, because in this phase, like if something like this were to play out, the stock market could continue on to hit, you know, 73, 75, 8,000 points, whilst Bitcoin continues to bleed out. And, you know, this isn't my opinion. This isn't Jason's opinion. Like, if you go watch Jason's video, he's backtested this across years and years of data, like the whole history of Bitcoin against the S&P 500. So that is absolutely something to keep in the back of your mind. If you are invested in Bitcoin, crypto, or crypto-related stocks like miners, exchanges, etc., just because the stock market index is pushing up, that does not mean your chosen stock is going to also make a new all-time high. Now, obviously, something like Nvidia has a great chance of making a new all-time high. Like, you look at how close that is. But if I were to bring up like something like CleanSpark or something, like, you can just see it's got so much overhead resistance. Like, obviously, it's had some great tradable ranges, like 50% swings in just 2 or 3 weeks. But as like a buy and hold for the next few months, I would definitely be very, very careful with my choices. With that being said, you know, something like Hyperliquid could potentially end up being a pretty good buy and hold because, you know, it's shown pretty great strength as almost every other altcoin has been getting absolutely decimated. Like, Hype has actually been making higher lows whilst Bitcoin has been making, I think, lower lows from January to February, if I'm correct. No, that is incorrect. That was November versus February. So, in which case, Hype has also made a lower low. But Hype is pretty much the only altcoin that seems to have kept up with Bitcoin. Like, if I pull up almost any other altcoin, like I'm just going to pull up, you know, Crow, you can see lower lows the entire time, even as Bitcoin has been pumping. Or, you know, my favorite crypto, Too Short this cycle, it's just been bleeding out. And I don't really know what else to say. You can see as I've been recording this video, price has just been whipsawing around. Like, this 15-minute range is being crazy. We're getting like 1% moves every 15-minute bar. That's just mad. So I definitely think a major move is brewing, and I do believe it will be to the upside for the time being, as I covered the USDT dominance theory in my last video. And you can see the US dollar is breaking down from weekly support. So potentially we might see another week or two down, and that may end up forming an inverse head and shoulders pattern, which could take obviously a couple more weeks to develop. And that may give Bitcoin, you know, another week or two to pump to the upside. But anyways, thank you all for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and let's see how this video ages. Peace out.